Do you know anyone in school that got free or reduced lunch? If so, you know a welfare recipient. The purpose of my speech is to persuade the audience from agreeing that there should be drug tests given to get welfare. All of my siblings are welfare recipients, being that my biological father could not pass a drug test if he was given one. I do not agree with that, and I understand the frustrations with those situations, but drug testing will cause more harm than it would do good. There would be way more money spent on drug testing than there would be if they would just give the welfare to those who could fail a drug test but need it. Drug testing should not be required for welfare recipients. It will cost so much more than it would save. And the government is doing it for the idea that they would be saving money, and realistically they would just be spending more than they would be saving. It doesn't consider the fact that, one, addiction is a disease. So if someone has any disease like anxiety or depression or autism or things like that, people treat it. People don't push them to the side and just ignore their disease. They treat them and they help them and they do what they can to help them do what they need. But with a drug addict, they just want to take from them and take from their children and their family and take from the things they need to survive. If drug addicts weren't given their welfare, it would be hurting the children more than it would hurt anyone, because ultimately adults that do drugs or things like that, they will know how to survive and find food or find a job. But children, they can't fend for themselves. They can't go out and get money to get food. They can't help that their parents are drug addicts, and they can't help that they aren't doing what they could because they're children. They can't do it for themselves. According to Bryce Culver in the article, What 7 States Discovered After Spending More Than $1 Million Drug Testing Welfare Recipients, recent statistics have shown that welfare applicants actually test positive at a lower rate than the drug use of the general population. So, statistics show that majority of the welfare recipients could pass a drug test rather than the few that couldn't. So, if the government was to drug test for welfare, they would have to provide drug tests for the people that already get welfare and the people that want to receive welfare. So they would have to give drug tests on a regular basis to every single person. So they would spend over millions of dollars just to drug test people, and only a little bit would fail. So they'd be wasting so many drug tests and so much money on people that would pass rather than the few that would fail. The government is saying that people who test positive would be denied entry to the program. So they would have to go through everyone that was in there, drug test them. If they passed, whatever. If they failed, they would have to take from them, which again, it's just taking from the children. It's not taking from the adults or anything like that. Strictly from an economic point of view, requiring drug tests for all welfare recipients would cost more than it would save. That is my main argument. My main point is that they would be forking out so much more money to do these things rather than they would be saving, and they're saying their ultimate goal for doing this is to save money. So the children who would be so confused, they wouldn't have food on their table, they couldn't go to the doctor if they were sick, and all because their parents lacked in what they needed to do. It's not their fault, and they can't help that. These findings are based off the initial drug testing the welfare applicant. So no matter how much sense it makes to you that they should drug test, because drug addicts don't need to sit on their butt and do drugs and not have jobs and get welfare and such like that, but it is a proven fact that if they did that, the government would be spending so much more money. We'd be getting nowhere with the argument of doing it because it would just be wasting money. With these statistics in mind, drug testing to save money is ultimately a fail. In order to do this system to be put into place, you would have to go through and do all the drug tests for all the people. You'd have to go through and make a schedule for when you would want them to drug test and when you wouldn't want them to drug test. In the article, Drug Testing for Welfare Client, Josh Butler discusses the results from a 3-year experiment in the state of Arizona. Throughout 3 years of random drug testing, $1 million was spent to discover 24 people that returned positive tests. Those 24, only 2 people failed the follow-up test. So out of everyone that was given a drug test, 24 people failed, and only 2 of those people failed the second drug test. So someone did drugs and then only failed the second one. So hard drugs only stay in your system for 3 to 5 days. So if they were doing a drug test once every month, then only pot would stay in your system, not the hard drugs. So they won't even be giving it to the people who are doing very hard, bad, illegal drugs.